What would you do if your own son and his wife kicked you out of the very house you built? Here's how I got my revenge 12 years later. That night in 2013, when my son Daniel and his wife Claire threw me out into that Atlanta storm, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. But let me tell you folks, rock bottom was just the beginning. I'm Lillian Harper, but my friends call me Lil, 70 years young and standing tall in my Buckhead mansion, worth $10 million. Back then, I was a 65-year-old widow, broken, with nothing but $632 and a suitcase full of memories. My husband had just passed, leaving me to lean on family I thought would catch me. Instead, Daniel, the boy I raised alone, and Claire, with her sharp tongue, decided I was a burden they couldn't carry. "We're done, Lil," Claire said, her voice dripping with disdain, while Daniel just stood there, silent, like a stranger. That betrayal cut deeper than the rain soaking my clothes. But 12 years later, I'm not that woman anymore. I built an empire from their cruelty, turning pain into power. They thought they'd buried me, but I rose like a phoenix. Now, hit that subscribe button and comment where you're watching from, because this story of how I went from a soggy porch to a mansion's gates will blow your mind. I'm here to prove one thing. Nobody gets to define your worth. Not your family, not your past nobody. Stick with me, because you're about to see how I made them regret every second of that stormy night. That stormy night in October 2013, when my son Daniel and his wife Claire threw me out of their Marietta home, wasn't just a betrayal, it was a wound that bled for weeks. I stood on their porch, 65 years old, rain soaking through my thin coat, clutching a suitcase that held my entire life. A few faded photos, a wedding ring from a husband gone too soon, and $632 in crumpled bills. "You're dead weight, Lil," Claire had hissed, her voice sharp as a blade, her manicured nails pointing to the door. Daniel, the boy I'd raised through sleepless nights and double shifts, just stood there, his silence louder than the thunder. I begged, "Daniel, I'm your mother. Where am I supposed to go?" His response? A blank stare and a shrug, as if I were a stranger begging for change. "Figure it out," Claire snapped, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frame. I was alone, abandoned in a Georgia downpour, my heart splintered into pieces too small to pick up. I stumbled to a taxi, my shoes squelching, and gave the driver the only address I could afford. The Pineview Motel off I-75, a rundown place that reeked of mildew and despair. It cost $45 a night, eating into my $632 like a vulture picking at a carcass. The room was barely 100 square feet, with a lumpy bed, a flickering television, and a window that looked out on a cracked parking lot. I sat on that bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying Claire's words in my head. Dead weight. Was that all I was after decades of sacrifice? I'd worked 2 jobs to put Daniel through school, mended his clothes, cheered at his baseball games. I'd given them my Social Security checks to help with their mortgage, cooked dinners for Sophie and Ethan, my grandkids, who were just 5 and 3 then, and yet they discarded me like a used tissue. The first week was a blur of pain. I called my sister, Ruth, in Savannah, my voice shaking as I asked for a place to stay. "Lil, I'm sorry," she said, her tone clipped. "We're full up here. You'll manage." Manage? I was 65, widowed, with no job and $632 to my name. I lay awake at night, the motel's neon sign buzzing outside, my body aching from the damp cold. Every morning, I'd wake up hoping it was a nightmare, only to feel that gut punch of reality. My own son had erased me from his life. I saw Sophie's tiny hand waving from the window as I left, her confused eyes haunting me. Claire had already started rearranging my room before the taxi even pulled away. I tried to hold it together, but the loneliness was suffocating. I'd walk to a nearby diner, nursing a $2 coffee, watching families laugh over pancakes, families who hadn't thrown their mothers away. One night, a waitress, maybe sensing my despair, slid a free slice of pie across the counter. "You look like you need this," she said softly. That small act of kindness broke me. I cried right there, tears mixing with the cherry filling, because it was the first warmth I'd felt since that porch. I had no plan, no future, just a burning question. How do you rebuild when your own blood betrays you? But even in that darkness, a spark of defiance flickered. I wasn't raised to give up. Back when Daniel's father left us, I worked 3 jobs, cleaning houses, waitressing, sewing late into the night to keep us afloat. If I could survive that, I could survive this. I started walking to the Decatur Public Library, a mile from the motel every day. It was free, warm, and had internet. I'd sit at those old computers, searching for jobs, my fingers trembling but determined. Nobody wanted a 65-year-old with no recent work history. But I wasn't begging for charity, I was hunting for a chance. That's when I saw it. A help wanted sign at Evelyn's Antiques, a small shop in Decatur. It wasn't much, $12 an hour, but it was a lifeline. I didn't know it then, but that sign was the first step toward turning my pain into power. Stick around, because this story's about to take a turn you won't believe. The Pineview Motel off I-75 wasn't just a roof over my head. It was a prison of despair, locking me in with my grief. Those first weeks after Daniel and Claire threw me out in October 2013 were a fog of anguish, but the true depths of my pain hadn't hit yet. At 65, I was alone in a 100-square-foot room that smelled like mold and regret. My $632 dwindling to $287 after 2 weeks of $45 nights and cheap diner meals. The neon sign outside buzzed like a taunt, reminding me I was unwanted, invisible. I'd lie on that lumpy mattress, clutching a faded photo of Sophie and Ethan, my grandkids, their tiny faces frozen in a happier time when I was still their grandma. I could still hear Sophie's giggle from when I'd braid her hair, or Ethan's squeal when I'd sneak him an extra cookie. Now, they were 300 miles away in Marietta, and I was nothing to them. I thought I'd hit bottom, but life had one more blow to deliver. My sister Ruth's rejection over the phone, "Lil, we're full up here," had stung, but I hadn't given up hope. I scraped together $15 for a bus ticket to Savannah, thinking maybe if I showed up, she'd see my desperation and let me in. I stood on her porch, my coat still damp from that Atlanta storm, and knocked. Ruth opened the door, her face hardening. "I told you, Lil, we can't take you in," she said, her voice flat, like she was turning away a salesman. "I've got my own problems. You're tough. You'll figure it out." Figure it out? I was 65, widowed, with no job, no home, and now no family. I wanted to scream, "I'm your sister. I helped raise your kids." But my voice broke, and all I managed was a whisper, "Ruth, please." She shut the door, softer than Daniel but just as final. I stood there, rain starting again, feeling like the last piece of my heart had been ripped out. Back at the Pineview, things got worse. The damp motel air seeped into my lungs, and by week 3, I was coughing so hard I could barely breathe. A fever came next, spiking to 102 degrees. I couldn't afford a doctor, so I lay in that bed, shivering under a thin blanket, my body aching like it was giving up. The motel clerk, a grizzled man named Joe, slipped me a bottle of cough syrup one night. "You don't look so good, ma'am," he said, his eyes kind but pitying. That pity burned worse than the fever. I wasn't just homeless. I was a charity case, a shadow of the woman who'd raised a son alone, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep him fed. I'd call Daniel's number sometimes, late at night, just to hear his voicemail. "This is Daniel. Leave a message." I never did. I'd hang up, tears streaming, knowing he knew where I was. A neighbor from Marietta had seen me at the motel and told him. He never called, never checked. My own son, driving past I-75 every day, left me to rot. The lowest moment came one night when I couldn't stop coughing, my chest rattling like a broken engine. I looked at that photo of Sophie and Ethan, their smiles mocking my failure. What did I do wrong? I whispered to the empty room. Was I too strict when Daniel was young? Too soft? Had I loved him too much? Or not enough? The silence answered with nothing but the hum of the motel's busted heater. I felt like I was disappearing. Like the world had decided I was already gone. But even in that abyss, something stubborn in me refused to die. I'd survived abandonment before Daniel's father walking out when he was 6, leaving me to scrape by. If I could do it then, I could do it now. The library became my lifeline, a mile's walk through Atlanta's cold streets. Those job listings on the library computers weren't just words. They were a rope pulling me out of the dark. Evelyn's Antiques, with its $12 an hour job, was my first chance to fight back. If you're still with me, keep listening, because this pain was just the fuel for what came next. The Pineview Motel had tried to break me, but at 65, I wasn't done fighting. After weeks of coughing through fevers and staring into the abyss of my sister Ruth's rejection, I found a spark of defiance in the ashes of my pain. That spark led me to the Decatur Public Library, a mile's walk from the motel through Atlanta's biting November cold. The library was my sanctuary: free heat, free internet, and a chance to claw my way back. I'd sit at those outdated computers, my hands still shaky from the fever, scrolling through job listings. Most places wanted younger workers, tech skills, or degrees I didn't have. "You're too old, Lil." I could almost hear Claire's voice sneering in my head. But I wasn't looking for pity. I was looking for a chance to prove her wrong. One morning, tucked between ads for baristas and delivery drivers, I saw it. A handwritten sign at Evelyn's Antiques, a dusty shop on Decatur's Main Street. Help wanted. $12 hour part-time. I walked in, my coat still smelling of motel mildew, and met Evelyn Carter, a 60-something woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense stare. "You ever worked with antiques?" she asked, eyeing my worn shoes. "Not exactly," I admitted, "but I've got an eye for value and hands that don't quit." She raised an eyebrow, then handed me a duster. "Start today. Don't break anything." That $12 an hour job felt like winning the lottery after scraping by on $287. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., walk to the shop, and spend hours polishing old lamps and sorting chipped teacups, every dollar a step away from that motel. Evelyn's shop was a treasure trove of forgotten things, cracked vases, tarnished silver, furniture nobody wanted. I saw myself in those objects, discarded but not worthless. I started reading about antiques at the library, staying late under flickering fluorescent lights, learning how to spot a real Tiffany lamp or a Chippendale chair. One day, I found a dusty porcelain vase in the back, marked for $10. Something about its delicate blue pattern caught my eye. I checked a library book on ceramics and realized it was a 19th century Wedgwood, worth at least $800. "Evelyn," I said, holding it up. "This isn't junk, it's a gem." She squinted, then grinned. "You've got a knack, Lil. Sell it and we'll split the profit." I sold that vase for $1,200 at a local auction, pocketing $600. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Like I wasn't just surviving but building something. That $600 was more than money, it was proof I could start over. I moved out of the Pineview into a 200-square-foot studio above a Decatur bakery. The smell of fresh bread, a daily reminder of what hope felt like. Rent was $500 a month, leaving me $100 for groceries and bus fare. But it was mine. No one could kick me out. I hung Sophie and Ethan's photo on the wall, promising myself I'd be someone they'd be proud of one day, even if their parents had forgotten me. At Evelyn's, I kept finding treasures: a $50 painting that sold for $2,000, a $5 brass clock worth $900. Each sale built my confidence, but it was a conversation with Evelyn that changed everything. "Lil," she said one evening, wiping down a mahogany table, "you're not just dusting antiques, you're giving them a second life. Why not do this on your own?" The idea terrified me. Start a business at 65. with no savings and a son who'd called me dead weight? But Evelyn's words lit a fire. I remembered the nights I'd sewn Daniel's school uniforms, worked double shifts, and still made him dinner. If I could do that, I could do this. I spent evenings at the library, watching YouTube videos on auctions, reading about restoration techniques. I saved every penny, building a $3,000 nest egg by spring 2014. With Evelyn's blessing, I started buying clearance items from other shops, $20 mirrors, $15 chairs, and restoring them in my tiny studio. My first solo sale was a $30 oak dresser. I refinished and sold for $700. That profit wasn't just money. It was a declaration. I wasn't done yet. Daniel and Claire thought they'd buried me, but I was digging my way out, one antique at a time. If you're still here, don't touch that dial, because this is where my story starts to soar. By spring 2014, I'd clawed my way out of the Pineview Motel's grip, but I was far from done. At 65, I'd turned $12 an hour dusting at Evelyn's Antiques into a knack for spotting treasures in forgotten things. That $1,200 Wedgwood vase sale was my spark, but it was Evelyn's words, "Why not do this on your own?" that lit a fire under me. I wasn't just polishing old furniture. I was rebuilding my life, piece by piece, and I was ready to dream bigger. Daniel and Claire thought they'd left me for dead on their Marietta porch, but every sale, every dollar, was proof they'd underestimated me. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building something they'd never imagine. My tiny 200-square-foot studio above that Decatur bakery was bursting with restored mirrors and chairs, each one a middle finger to the people who'd called me dead weight. I took my $3,000 savings and made a leap. In June 2014, I rented a 500-square-foot shop in Decatur for $800 a month, naming it Revive and Thrive Antiques. The name wasn't just catchy, it was my promise to the world and to myself. Nothing is worthless if you see its potential. I spent my days scouring estate sales, thrift stores, and clearance bins across Atlanta, buying $20 tables and $10 lamps that I'd restore and sell for hundreds. My first month, I cleared $2,500 in profit. It wasn't millions, but it was mine, earned through sweat and a refusal to quit. I'd work late into the night, sanding wood, polishing brass, my hands calloused but my heart full. Every piece I saved felt like saving a part of myself, proving I wasn't the burden Claire had sneered at. Then I met Michael Thompson at a small business workshop in Atlanta's community center. Michael, a sharp-eyed consultant in his 50s, saw my numbers and leaned across the table. "Lil, you're not just selling antiques," he said, tapping my ledger. "You're solving a problem. Shops throw out thousands of dollars in inventory because they don't know what they've got. You do." His words hit like lightning. I wasn't just flipping furniture, I was turning waste into profit, just like I'd turned my pain into purpose. Michael helped me draft a business plan, 35 pages of dreams I barely dared to dream. We applied for a $50,000 SBA loan, and I nearly fainted when it was approved in March 2015. "You've got something special, Lil," Michael said, handing me the papers. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I signed with shaking hands, knowing this was my shot to build something unstoppable. With that loan, I leased a 2,000-square-foot warehouse on the edge of Decatur, hired 2 part-time workers, and started contracts with 5 antique shops across Georgia. By 2016, Revive and Thrive was pulling in $150,000 a year, and I'd moved to a 600-square-foot apartment with a small balcony where I kept a restored rocking chair as a reminder of my journey. Word spread fast. "That lady in Decatur can turn junk into gold," dealers would say. I wasn't just selling antiques, I was teaching shops how to stop throwing money away. By 2018, I'd expanded to 10 states: Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and beyond, training others to spot value like I did. My team grew to 15 employees, and we hit $1.2 million in revenue. I'd walk through my warehouse, shelves stacked with restored treasures, and feel a pride that no one not Daniel, not Claire could take away. The biggest moment came in 2020 when Forbes called. "Mrs. Harper, we're doing a piece on women entrepreneurs over 60, the reporter said. "Your story's inspiring." Me, in Forbes? The woman who'd lived in a motel with $287? I laughed, but inside I was soaring. That article brought a call from Sotheby's, the auction house, offering a $500,000 contract to supply restored pieces for their Atlanta auctions. I signed it on my balcony, sipping coffee from a $5 mug I'd kept from the motel days. Every dollar, every deal, was a brick in my empire, built on the ashes of that stormy night in 2013. Daniel and Claire had tried to bury me, but I'd grown roots deeper than they could fathom. If you've ever been counted out, comment below and tell me how you fought back. Stick with me, because the best part of this story is coming up next. 12 years after Daniel and Claire threw me out into that 2013 Atlanta storm, I stood in my 15,000 square foot Buckhead mansion, a far cry from the Pineview Motel's damp walls. My empire, Revive and Thrive Antiques, was now a $5 million a year business spanning 10 states, and I'd just signed a deal with Sotheby's. I was sipping coffee on my marble-floored balcony, overlooking Atlanta's skyline, when the security system buzzed at 8:45 a.m. on a crisp Saturday in 2025. I checked the monitor, and my heart stopped. There they were, Daniel, Claire, and my grandkids, Sophie and Ethan, standing at my wrought iron gates like ghosts from a past I'd buried. Daniel, now 45, looked worn, his hair graying, his khakis wrinkled. Claire, 42, clung to a designer purse, her face tight with forced confidence. Sophie, 18, and Ethan, 16, stared wide-eyed at the mansion's sprawling lawns. The nerve of them, showing up the day after the Atlanta Journal ran a story about my $10 million purchase. I walked to the gate, my silk robe brushing the heated floors, my voice steady but cold. "Well, well," I said, arms crossed. "Daniel, Claire, what's this? A family reunion?" Daniel shifted, avoiding my eyes, just like he did 12 years ago on that Marietta porch. "Mom," he stammered. "We saw the paper. We wanted to congratulate you." "Congratulate me?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "How convenient. You remember your mother the moment I own a 15,000 square foot estate." Claire stepped forward, her smile as fake as her knockoff purse. "Lil, we know things ended badly," she said, her voice syrupy. "We've had time to reflect. We were wrong to handle things the way we did." "Handle things?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean when you called me dead weight and threw me out with $632 to my name?" Sophie, her dark hair pulled back, looked confused. "Grandma Lil, what's she talking about?" Her voice hit me like a punch. She was 5 when I last saw her, clinging to my hand as Claire yanked her away. Ethan, now tall and lanky, stared at his parents. "Dad, you said Grandma moved to Florida." I locked eyes with Daniel, daring him to lie again. "Is that what you told them?" I asked, my voice low, venomous. "That I abandoned you all? Not that you left your widowed mother homeless in a storm?" Daniel's face flushed, his hands fidgeting. "Mom, it wasn't like that. We were stressed. The mortgage, my job." I cut him off. "Stressed? You drove past the Pineview Motel every day for weeks, Daniel. You knew I was there, coughing my lungs out, and you never stopped." Claire's mask slipped, her eyes narrowing. "Lil, we're trying to make amends. We're family. Doesn't that mean anything?" I leaned closer, my voice ablade. "Family? You told me to figure it out when I had nowhere to go. You stole 12 years with my grandkids." Sophie's eyes welled up. "Mom, Dad, is that true?" she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened, his gaze shifting to the mansion's fountain. I could see the gears turning in their heads, the betrayal sinking in. Claire tried to pivot. Lil, we're in trouble, she admitted, her voice cracking. Daniel lost his job 6 months ago. We're behind on the mortgage. We thought maybe you could help. Just a little. Help? I looked at the mansion behind me, 6 bedrooms, a chandeliered foyer, a pool sparkling under the Georgia sun. You want help? I said, my tone icy. You want to move into my home because you mismanaged your lives? Daniel finally met my eyes, his voice desperate. Mom, please. We're facing foreclosure. Sophie needs college funds. We're family. That word again, family. It burned like acid. Family didn't mean much when you slammed that door in my face. I snapped. You thought I'd wither away. Instead, I built this. I gestured to the mansion, my voice rising. Every brick, every dollar, earned without you. Ethan spoke up, his voice soft but firm. Grandma, we didn't know. They told us you didn't want us. My heart cracked, but I held my ground. I know, Ethan, and that's why you and Sophie are welcome here. But your parents? They've got some proving to do. If you're as angry as I was, comment below and tell me what you'd do. Stay tuned, because this confrontation's about to get even hotter. The air in my Buckhead Mansion's foyer was thick with tension as Daniel and Claire stood before me, their fake apologies hanging like cheap perfume. 12 years after they threw me out into that 2013 Atlanta storm, they had the audacity to beg for a piece of my $10 million empire, built from the ashes of their betrayal. My grandkids, Sophie and Ethan, stood frozen, their faces torn between confusion and dawning anger as I called out their parents' lies. You told them I abandoned you, I said, my voice a razor, cutting through Daniel's stammering excuses. You said I moved to Florida, not that you left me homeless with $632. Claire's eyes flashed, her composure cracking. Lil, stop rewriting history, she snapped, clutching her purse like a shield. We were under pressure. You were difficult. Difficult? I laughed, cold and sharp, the sound echoing off the marble floors. Difficult was surviving in a motel while you redecorated my room. Bye. I turned to Sophie and Ethan, their young faces searching for truth. There's something you need to see, I said, pulling my tablet from a nearby table, my hands steady despite the rage boiling inside. 10 years ago, your father came to me, alone, at my Decatur apartment. Daniel's face went white, his mouth opening, but no words came. Claire's head snapped toward him. What is she talking about? She hissed, her voice low and dangerous. I swiped to a video file, time-stamped January 2015, and hit play. There was Daniel, younger but haggard, sitting in my tiny studio, his eyes red from tears or whiskey or both. Mom. His voice crackled through the tablet's speakers. I was wrong. Claire pushed me to kick you out, but I shouldn't have listened. I miss you. I want you to come home. Please don't tell her I was here, she'll leave me if she knows. The video ended, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the chandelier above us. Sophie's hands covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Dad, you lied to us, she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan, usually quiet, stepped forward, his fists clenched. You told us Grandma didn't want us. You made us hate her. Claire's face twisted, her charm replaced by fury. You went behind my back? She spat at Daniel, her voice rising to a shriek. You begged her to come back and didn't tell me? Daniel shrank, mumbling. I was drunk, Claire. I didn't mean it. I raised a hand, my voice calm but lethal. Oh, you meant every word, Daniel. You came to me crying, promising to make it right, but you never did. You drove past my motel for months, knowing I was sick, and chose her over your own mother. I turned to my grandkids, softening my tone. Sophie, Ethan, I kept this video not to hurt you, but to protect myself. Your parents stole 12 years from us, birthdays, Christmases, all the moments we should have had. Sophie sobbed. We didn't know, Grandma. They said you left us. My heart ached, but I held firm, looking back at Daniel and Claire. You want my help now? I asked, my voice dripping with disdain. You want to move into my 15,000 square foot mansion because you're facing foreclosure? Because you blew your savings on vacations and designer bags? I stepped closer. My eyes locked on Claire's Onspalens. I built this empire with my own hands, while you thought I'd rot in that motel. You don't get to waltz in and claim it. Claire's face flushed red, her voice shaking with desperation. We're family, Lil. You can't turn your back on us. I smiled, cold and unyielding. Turn my back? Like you did when you slammed that door in my face? Like when you told me to figure it out with $632 and a fever? Ethan's voice cut through, raw and angry. Mom, Dad, how could you do this? He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Grandma, we didn't know any of this. Can we still see you? I nodded, my throat tight. You and Sophie are welcome here any time. But your parents? I turned to Daniel and Claire, my voice steel. You've got to earn that privilege, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. The truth was out, and their lies were crumbling. If you're as shocked as I was, drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Stay with me. Because this story's not over yet. As Daniel and Claire stood in my Buckhead Mansion's foyer, their lies exposed by that 2015 video, I felt a weight lift off my chest. 12 years ago, they'd thrown me out into a 2013 Atlanta storm, leaving me with $632 and a broken heart. They thought I'd fade away, just another forgotten widow in a motel. But here I was, at 70, standing in a 15,000 square foot testament to my resilience, my empire, Revive and Thrive Antiques, generating $5 million a year across 10 states. The video of Daniel's tearful confession had shattered Sophie and Ethan's trust in their parents, and Claire's fury at her husband's betrayal echoed off my marble walls. I looked at my grandkids, their eyes wide with hurt and hope, and made a choice. Sophie, Ethan, I said softly, my voice steady despite the ache in my throat. You're not your parents' mistakes. You're welcome here anytime to talk, to laugh, to rebuild what they stole from us. Sophie nodded, tears streaming, and Ethan squeezed my hand, a gesture that felt like a lifeline to the past I'd lost. I turned to Daniel and Claire, their faces a mix of shame and desperation. You don't get to walk into my home and claim my success, I said, my voice low but unyielding. You called me dead weight, told me to figure it out. Well, I did. I built this without you, and I'll keep building without you. Claire's mouth opened, but no words came. Daniel just stared at the floor, the same coward who'd driven past the Pineview Motel without stopping. Go fix your lives, I told them. Earn your way back if you can, but don't expect me to hand you anything. They left, their footsteps fading down my long driveway, while Sophie and Ethan promised to visit soon. That promise felt like a seed. Small but full of potential, just like the antiques I'd learned to revive. Standing on my balcony later that evening, I watched the Atlanta skyline glow under a golden sunset. My mansion's pool sparkled below, and the 10-acre grounds stretched out like a canvas of my triumph. I thought about that stormy night in 2013, the motel's damp walls, Ruth's closed door in Savannah, the fever that nearly broke me. Every scar had led me here. The lesson I learned wasn't just about survival, it was about value. Being thrown away doesn't mean you're worthless. It means you're free to find your true worth, to build something no one can take away. For me, it was turning forgotten antiques into treasures, just like I'd turned my pain into power. For you, it might be a skill, a passion, a dream you've buried under doubt. No matter your age, your past, or who's counted you out, you can start again. Find that spark, nurture it, and let it grow into something unstoppable. I sipped my coffee, the same $5 mug from my motel days now a relic of my journey. This mansion, this life, wasn't just about money, it was about proving I was more than the burden Daniel and Claire saw. It was about showing the world, and myself, that I belonged here. My phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn, my old boss from Decatur. "You did it, Lil. Proud of you." I smiled, knowing I'd done more than survive, I'd thrived. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever been counted out but kept going, I want to hear about it. Drop a like, share your story in the comments, and join the Unwanted Revenge community by hitting subscribe. Your voice matters, and together, we can show the world what it means to rise from the ashes. Thank you for listening.